/ backa kåken i Malmö.
Är det något som jag måste göra? Förlåt. Tack så mycket.
Jo.
Hej. Tack så mycket för inbjudan. Jag är så otroligt glad att vara här. Jag flyttade från Liverpool i Storbritannien till Malmö, eller till Skåne faktiskt. Vad har vi här? En mer. Tack så mycket. 3 år sedan. Och jag hållade på kanske 15 år i Storbritannien i min egen grannskap i Anfield att utveckla en community land trust som del av den större community land trust-rörelsen i Storbritannien. Så att komma här till den konferensen är som att komma hem. Det är jättefint. Det är jättebra att vara här. Och jag är ju också mycket taggad att vi ska på något sätt börja den här. So I'm going to switch to English because we haven't got so much time and I will not be able to keep it short otherwise. So I will be talking very briefly about why we organise. Then I will give a quick overview of the British sector. I will take you to Anfield for a short trip. And then we do a little whistle-stop tour of some variations of that model that we see and have heard about already. And if we have some time, I think it might be nice to talk a little bit about the conditions that make it possible for us to grow together. Okay, we are a movement. So what is it that moves us? Imagine a place like Cornwall or Österlen where people buy second homes driving up the market and making it impossible for the next generations to afford to live there. Imagine a place like London or Stockholm where people that have jobs that keep our society going, like teachers, carers, bin collectors, young people, newcomers, have to move further and further to the outskirts of the city because they cannot afford appropriate housing. Imagine places like Anfield in Liverpool or Rosengård in Malmö where no developer wants to build quality housing because the profit margins are just not good enough. So I think this is why we started organising in my community, I'm pretty sure, and many others in the UK, and I'm guessing that is also why many of you are here and at this conference today. This is the definition in the UK. In the UK, we started this like a sort of the first CLTs in around 2006, rurally. It came over, people actually travelled over to Vermont to find out about this fantastic example there, and it swapped over to us, and it kind of maybe combined itself with the revival of the cooperative movement and also some sort of a collective, what we heard today, third sector thinking. So next to the market and the private, what is it that we need? And I guess, Kate Raworth talks about in her donut model about the commons as that third sector. How do we care for the things that we need to have in common that we really should not be speculating on? And in the UK, that is a community energy movement that sits there. It's the community-led housing movement where we pull all of those different forms together. And it's community businesses, which is ways for us to take over our local services and so on and run them as a community because we need them, which you also have a lot, especially in the countryside. Just to get a tiny bit of an understanding, you've already seen the card, the map, and I guess, you just see how many we are, how many homes have been completed and so on. I think the 2 really important things for me to add to what Jonas has said is that community is not just about the board or the styrelse or the thing. It's actually, and that's also what we adopted from the civil rights movement who started this movement, is the community organizing, is together take the agency, take matters into our own hands in our own communities and lead on this. So we lead on talking about what it is that we need locally and that the voice of our lived experience is heard in that. And then we work together with the public, with other organizations, and so on. The other that I think is really important is that community land trusts have all kinds of things. So they are not only about housing, but also offer what I just talked about in terms of the common goods. Plus, there is a lot of community land trusts around biodiversity, for example. So we keep land in common to protect nature or to grow things together or whatever that means. Okay, I am moving on. Welcome to Unfield. This is Unfield. Many of you have been, I think. Put your hand up if you have been. Whoop whoop. Okay, so this is the home to Liverpool Football Club. This is our stadium looming in the background, massive, big neighbour. People travel from all over the world to visit us. It's the biggest tourist attraction in Liverpool. I would even say one of the biggest in the UK. At the same time, we are in the top 7% of the most deprived neighbourhoods in the UK. And we don't like the word deprived, but let's use it for this. You know, we're not deprived of ideas, but we're definitely deprived of education, how long we can live, health, and so on, including, actually, we have really bad, excuse my language, housing stock, very energy inefficient, and currently we have next to 25% of people live in fuel poverty, meaning they have to choose every day if they heat or eat. So that's the kind of condition, and then I need to go through this a bit quicker. This is all terraced houses, beautiful terraced houses that in a regeneration scheme were mainly demolished. A lot of properties around where we organize in a kind of attempt to start up the market, you know, to get the market going, because houses were only worth, I don't know, maybe 30,000. But if you own that house and you live in that house, who cares how much it is worth, because you weren't going to sell it anyway. So people had to sell their homes, they had to sell them for prices that they wouldn't be able to buy a new one for. And instead, we got what the market can afford for us, which is houses that are just not good enough. They are by no means as good as the old ones that were taken away. So that is just, you know, this is how the system functions. Generally, we organized from within, so on our high street for a long time, more and more shops were closing down because it was cheaper to just open, it was more viable for shops to just open as a takeaway for the matches, but not for the day-to-day business. So we actually took over this iconic neighborhood bakery that the family owners left because they thought it was going to be demolished, and they went into retirement. We took it over, we had it as a neighborhood window, and then people started coming and said, like, this is all very great, you talk about housing, we talk about, you know, what about bread? Are you going to offer bread or what? So we were like, oh God, okay. So we started a co-op. And we opened it back up as a bakery. This sounds, because I need to get through this faster, this sounds like it's really easy, but it wasn't. But what we actually did in that time, and this is also about value, right? Like, what do we value in our neighborhoods? And what we did is we had a demolition order on the house. We weren't owning it, we were just renting it. And we opened our business a couple of months later. We were like, here we are. This is what it could be like, this is what it could look like. And by doing that, we actually saved that house from demolition, and then the houses next, because we started having the conversations with the council that made that possible. Because they also could see, of course, that maybe this is a way of working from the bottom up, working with what there is, not with whatever we wish there to be. And in this process, we then came together and started planning for our high street. And these are co-design processes, both for housing but also for business spaces, because it became clear to us that we need both. And we do this in a sort of mix of people that are not necessarily going to move in there, but they are people that represent their community with lots of different backgrounds, so we get a feeling of what's needed. And today we only actually own that building. It has a flat on the top and the business on the bottom. And then we have a scheme in the pipeline that then lots of things came in the mix with construction costs rising and so on. But I think we're going to get there with 9 houses coming up. We do we do affordable rent, which we peg at the market price. Okay. And we own the land and the buildings, actually, which is a bit unusual in the community land trust network. All right, I'm going to just move us a little bit through. So this is the scheme that we're building, and we can only really do that on the back of land allocation because so we are in a cold housing market. So what we can lend is only ever 80%, which is good, but 80% of the price of the building when it's finished. So, or the market price of the building when it's finished, and that is not so much. So it actually costs more to build it than what the market ever will give it. So we need land allocation, for example, from our council at ideally £1, because otherwise, how are we ever going to build that quality that is needed in our neighborhood, which is energy efficiency, retrofit, and so on, so we can keep the bills low and keep it affordable for the long term. Okay, I'm going to take you very quickly to London. In London, the average house prices are 13 times the average income at the moment. This is the London CLT. They work across London with different initiatives, so you can see how they kind of support, build up local communities. The local groups campaign, they bid for land, so they are housing activists. They co-design the scheme and the allocation process, who will get the housing. We normally have certain allocation criteria, and they have to do with living or working or having a local connection is when you can get a home. And they act as the developer and buy the land, but then people buy the homes. Meanwhile, the CLT holds on or puts the land into a trust, depending on what they do out there. And this is, I think, interesting because this is an innovation that was done in the UK together with our banks, or some of our banks, Ecology Bank in particular, to be able to do that. I see some smiling. Prices are based on local median incomes. Yeah. So that means, and for the borough, and that's also the resale price. So I buy a house, and when I resell it, I sell it at that same price. So there is no speculation involved, just some interest and so on. Inflation rise and so on. Yeah. Then we have some, this is Eastington CLT, just to give you an idea. They work with the social housing provider as a company, as a partner, as a development partner, and then they actually keep the land and lease over long term to the social housing provider that does everything else, very classic. This is Your Space CLT, they do the same, but they actually support housing cooperatives, Hyresrätt housing cooperatives, to develop the building, so they keep the land, but they also do development support. With those cooperative housing, they build very sustainably. And this is maybe interesting for the self-building crowd. This is We Can Make in Bristol CLT. They do tiny homes and what they call gentle densification, and what you can see here on the picture is that they basically take over. People can sell a bit of their land in their backyard, or the council can give up some unused land, and that's where we can build some tiny houses. They think that in this model of gentle densification, we could provide an additional 33,000 homes all across England. And this is Hastings, and they are very similar to us. More than housing, just a lot better than us. They have a lot more housing, but housing, and then they renovate difficult spaces into workspaces, social spaces, and add a living rent. So that's a third of the median local income as rent. And they have a big emphasis on the common organizing culture, and they have different organizations that do the different things. So they have a development company, they have a housing management company, and then they have the community land trust. Okay, and I'm just going to really, really briefly just talk about, so because I think, we often, like, when we started this, 2006, whatever, it's not like the conditions were great, right? Like, we often talk about, like, oh God, we could never get to these kind of setups. because our conditions are not like that here in Sweden, here in Poland, here and wherever. But of course, these conditions are being built. We build them together from the grassroots and together with our partners at banks, at local, at our social investor institutions and so on. And I think one big thing is land allocation, markanvisning. So can we get to a point working with our local authorities and other landholders to sell under market value, considering social and environmental values that we deliver to our community, and that is something to also look into policy development for that. Malmö needs that kind of a policy. We need to move onward with this kind of stuff. It's very difficult and moves very slowly. I think democratic share investment is what we use a lot, putting all our little bit together for it to be more and offering. So this is share investment that is democratic share investment, like your frivilliga intäkter. So we have a really strong sector of community shares. They're a way for people to invest, but they will only ever keep one democratic voice. We announced in the UK at the moment, I think the investment since 2012 in everything, land, energy, housing, and so on, is 200 million. That's 200 million of people's money together, which is really quite amazing. We then have a quality brand around that, so that you can have it's signed off that this is a good investment. And then we have a match investment fund that comes alongside it, where every pound is matched by the different social investors. And finally, consistent funding programs. I think we've heard all of that today. We know that these kind of things don't come out of nowhere. And I think it's really important to understand that communities like mine, this is now, we have a second co-op. Between those two co-ops, we employ 25 people on the living wage. We have a network in the neighborhood between all the businesses and all the social organizations. We have a program for retrofit. This doesn't come out of nowhere. This comes out of capacity building over many years. And this is the next generation of people that take this thing forward and multiply it. But in that very beginning, especially in our communities, we need resource. We need capacity building, because we don't come from professional backgrounds like architects or planners or finance experts. So to get there, we need to get there. And we need to get there because this is what it looks like when we get there. And that's quite amazing. And when we lose our land, or we have problems, or our local government changes and they don't hold anymore to what they said they were going to do, this is what we can do, and we are heard nationally and internationally because we're known for what we do. That's it. Thank you.
Tack så jättemycket. Har vi några frågor i publiken?
Oh. Har vi tid?
Ja.
How do you actually get the money to the CLT?
Hur får du pengarna till CLT?
Yeah, so what do you mean? What kind of blend of finance we usually have? Yeah, yeah. So we have capital investment comes through both grants. We have a community-led housing fund that is very unsteady and with change of governments and so on. But that's a really good capital investment. It's a government grant particularly for community-led housing, not just for social housing, which in England is really specific because we cannot access social housing unless we are a provider, which is a really difficult thing to be. Then we have raised a project like this can raise up to 500,000 in community shares, and we use equity investment. Then we now we have one finance provider called Resonance that works together, for example, with Ecology Bank, Charity Bank, and so on, and they give a development loan, which is a bridge loan. So you refinance after 3 years, but it's on 0%. So in the time that we are building and don't have an income, we can have a 0% loan. And this is the kind of stuff that we really need, because we don't have the kind of capital anywhere in the background to do this kind of stuff. But some people also pre-finance, for example, with community shares, which are risk capital in a way. They're risk investment, and people who invest like that know that.
En fråga, det är mycket stadsperspektiv här, men det kommer från landsbygden också i det här. Hur funkar det på landsbygden i Storbritannien?
Det var den ena var en exempel från landsbygden. Det fanns, den har jag tagit ut, men det finns en annan. Det finns många exempel faktiskt på landsbygden. Det är ofta så att de jobbar med delvis. De köper lite här och lite här och lite här och lite här och gör olika, kanske en gata och sen ett hus här och sen en town hall över där och sen har de lite olika grejer de använder. Eller som finns också mycket in those villages where the house prices are really high and they have to build new, for example, and they can't afford to build new at affordable prices. That's when they build new developments, and they often work quite closely with their parish council to find that kind of land that they can imagine to, hand over or give over for under the land value, because again, the land value is what makes it nearly impossible to do that. I think the really beautiful thing about this movement is that it goes across politics. So it doesn't matter if it's a conservative government or a liberal government or a green government or actually the Social Democrats are the most difficult. That's what it kind of works across all of those. So there's a lot of local parish councils that completely get it because the politicians live in those villages and they know that their own children can't move back.